I'm Warren Sprouse. I'm the host of the Bible Forum that meets every Sunday night from 8 until 10 p.m. right here on thebibleforum.net. We talk about life. We talk about issues that interest us about life, and we talk about them in light of what the Bible says about them. We'd love it if you could join us. If you cannot, they are available in electronic format from our website, thebibleforum.net, all week long. Or you can go to our YouTube page, or you can go to sermonaudio.com, and you can watch the segments. But you miss all the in-between stuff. Here's an article, a blog that I wrote this week on the counseling website. It's trybiblicalcounseling.net. It's entitled How Homosexuality Advocates Won the Argument. It's a science. It's public relations. A recent Gallup poll in May of this year, 2015, indicated a new record high number of Americans, 51%, who support same-sex marriage. 8 major studies of identical twins in Australia, Australia has the largest twin register in use, indicate that same-sex attraction is not genetic. 51% of Americans believe in same-sex marriage, convinced because people have told them that's not their fault. The largest study ever done says that homosexuality is a choice. It's not genetic. Do the 51% know that? No, they don't. Well, why do they believe this when that's true? It's sort of like, are you going to believe the truth or your lying eyes? If we had somebody who came along and tried to tell us the truth, would we believe it? A majority of Americans now believe that human beings are driven toward same-sex attraction by their genetic code, when the reality is the opposite. In fact, studies show about half of the homosexual or bisexual population who are in a non-therapeutic environment move toward heterosexuality over a lifetime. About half. About 3% of the present heterosexual population once firmly believed themselves to be homosexual or bisexual. 3% doesn't sound like a big number, but the homosexual community has never been larger than 4%. 3% of the heterosexual population once firmly believed themselves to be homosexual or bisexual. So this now should convince Americans of the truth. No. I would venture to say about 70% of the public would say, no, I still believe that it's not like this. Dr. Neil Whitehead, who has spent 25 years in scientific research, working for the United Nations, the International Atomic Energy Agency, serves as a consultant to Japanese universities about the effects of radiation exposure, has a PhD in biochemistry and statistics. 70% of the population in America, no degrees, no experience, lots of opinion. So where does all the opinion come from? It comes from the media. And it has been a masterful PR effort. It began in the 1990s, shaping our view of homosexuality. Dr. Al Mohler, president of Southern Baptist Seminary in Kentucky, writes, quote, "A partial explanation of the homosexual movement's success can be traced to the 1989 publication entitled After the Ball, How America Will Conquer Its Fear and Hatred of Gays in the 90s. And the book outlines a 6-step strategy. First of all, repackage yourself as mainstream, talking to the homosexual community, demanding equal treatment under the banner of equal rights, civil rights. Secondly, establish your victimhood, human rights. Thirdly, talk freely and incessantly about your beliefs and your practices. Mainstream this thing. Fourthly, portray yourself as victims of circumstance, not aggressive challengers of the status quo. Fifthly, keep the crazy fringe groups under cover and out of sight. And lastly, emphasize the haters. That's you. Quote those non-homosexuals willing to coexist. Christians who say, well, we got to understand. This is the strategy. 1989. How did it all work out for them? Americans are known for their sympathy. They don't like to see people being taken advantage of or being persecuted. And so casting homosexuals as victims feeds that side of our psyche, elicits a sense of fair play, and causes us to be angry with anyone who now would say that these are bad people doing bad things. Well, what constitutes bad? The idea that these folks have chosen a dangerous, destructive, and disgusting sexual practice when everybody knows they can't help it, when everybody knows that they've been born this way, is to say this thing is not bad. There have been no scientific studies to date that prove homosexuality to be genetic. Not one. Every accepted study has gone in the opposite direction. In fact, Whitehead writes, quote, neutral academic surveys have indicated about half of the homosexual, bisexual population in a non-therapeutic environment moves toward heterosexuality over a lifetime. About 3% of the present heterosexual population once firmly believed themselves to be homosexual or bisexual. Sexual orientation is not set in concrete, he notes. The majority of change is toward exclusive heterosexuality. Who tells you stuff like this but me? If homosexuality were genetic identical twins, people who share the same DNA should reflect a consistent and dramatically similar lifestyle and sexual predisposition. But they do not. In 2002, Bierman and Bruckner studied tens of thousands of adolescent students in the United States. The same-sex attraction concordance between identical twins was only 7.7% for males, 5.3% for girls. The 2000 Australian study indicated 11 and 14%, respectively. Did I mention that Bierman and Bruckner are both gay? Or at least pro-gay? They found that, quote, from 16 to 17 years of age, if a person had a romantic attraction to the same sex, almost all had switched 1 year later. They found that the only stability was among heterosexuals, who stayed the same year after year. Adolescents apparently changed their attractions from year to year. What's new? Psychiatrists William Bine and Bruce Parsons summarized the science. Quote, critical review shows the evidence favoring a biologic theory to be lacking. In fact, the current trend may be to underrate the explanatory power of extant psychosocial models. End of quote. In other words, homosexuality is a psychological malady, not something someone is born with. Gee, I've heard those words before. Will it make any difference in the American psyche? Will the average American now view homosexuality differently? Not this year. Why not? Because the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Given a choice between overt godliness and personal gratification, you already know which one's going to win. Also, the public relations has been masterful. Millions of Americans have bought into the idea that homosexuals just can't help themselves, and that all you Christians are really bigots because you're going in the opposite direction. Is any of that true? No. Christians are not bigots at all. When you stand up and you say, don't jump off that cliff, you will die, you're not limiting somebody's rights. You're not being a bigot toward people who like to jump. You're trying to help. It is the supreme act of love to holler at somebody and say, look out, when the train is coming. But where it comes to sexual things, you can't do that. If you do, you're a bigot. Who did that? This book did that. It set up this program, and these people latched onto it, and they have run with it. And what is the end result? The end result is that we have all bought into the lie. It's still no more than about 4% of the population who practice homosexual behavior. Young people are experimental by nature, but every American, for the most part, tends to go back the other way. I heard just this week somebody talk about a friend of theirs who was a lesbian, and she just got married to a man. After, 7, 8, 10 years, whatever, she married this guy. The question was, whoa, what happened? And she just smiled. Well, I tried that. I want to have a family. I want to have children. I want to raise them in an environment that's healthy for the kids. I'm tired of that lifestyle. And that's not to say that all homosexual relationships are just off the wall, decadent and evil and all the rest. Some of them genuinely love each other. They're trying for all they're worth. But that's a very small percentage of people. Doesn't take much, though. You can find 5 people that illustrate the good parts of a relationship in this world like that, and that'll offset the other 872,000 that are just crazy people. And Americans will buy into the possibility that these people are genuine, and we're just trying to hurt them. You ever look at the statistics of the lifestyle of a practicing homosexual and the diseases and the damage that it causes? And you can just stand by and say, it doesn't really matter. They love each other. I don't care. And I got to wonder, where's your heart?